No idea. No.
I wasn't either.
I had 24 hours to make a decision. I got called by my manager and they said the show called Shannara wants to do a test there. Like that, you know, they were getting me in there and I had 24 hours to assimilate this series as my next step in my career. But then when I heard Jon Favreau was on board, that Dan Farrow was producing with Jon Favreau, I just knew they were really good players in Hollywood and Los Angeles to be involved with. None of that had to deal with garbage, and it was going to be a high-end production. And then the cherry on top was it was actually filming back in New Zealand. Like this was my first audition, having landed in LA after Arrow and everything, you know, and I got sent back home. For all the right reasons, you know, because being sent back home meant that I went home to do a series with all the people who created, you know, the same people that I worked on with The Hobbit, you know, like Shannara, in terms of its production, all the people doing sound, lighting, camera, all that stuff, they're all the people from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, the set designers. So as soon as I walked onto the set, it was like, oh, this looks just like the big productions that we do for film over there. So, you know, MTV are going to, you know, throw a lot of you know, they're going to throw their hand on the table, you know, and take a big gamble with this as what really should be on a film scale. They're bringing to television, but I mean, you know, that's the new age of television. Keep on knocking the bone.
What are you able to tease about your characters? Like, for example, when we first meet them, like in the first episode.
Well, my character, she's one of the few humans in the Four Lands, because the story basically takes place in the future, where most humankind has been extinguished. And I'm part of a rover group, and rover group they're thieves, they're a nomadic group that goes around. They don't have a really good reputation. So she's from the wrong side of the tracks, basically. Eritrea comes from a very tough background where she's had to learn how to survive, how to gain respect of her clan. And in the first episode, you'll see how badass I like to say she is, and how she's kind of selfish, and that's how she's learned to survive, and ruthless. But she just has such a big heart, and she's, at the end of the day, she just wants a better life for herself, and it's her journey. And you guys will see slowly, little by little, how she starts growing and how she starts seeing new horizons.
Yeah, but I think with Ivana, you know, like I think some of the casting choices in this show were really interesting. You know, they actually went for people who had been involved in genres that the audience already knew about. You know, your involvement in Pan's Labyrinth. I mean, you know, to associate, you know, her as a young actress and that, and her stepping into this American production, you know, Shannara is like it's a global tie-in. You're getting an international actress and somebody who's got that kind of pedigree, you know. And I remember when I heard the girl from Pan's Labyrinth is going to be on this, I was like, wow, that brings a lot of weight with it, you know. And then you've got, like, you know, you've got Jonathan Rhys Meyers, you know, who's like, you know, one of the icons of the acting world, you know, great theatre actor. I mean, his whole presence has been like a mentor for us all, you know. Then Austin is like the next young Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio. He literally is, but he's got a heart of gold, and you know, he's you know, just an incredible young talent to be working with. You know, and this is the exact vehicle that he wants to sort of charge his career forward. And then, you know, Poppy. I mean, Poppy is, I don't know, she's just extraordinarily beautiful and talented. You know, she's like a Burberry commercial to me. So, you know, but she can act. You know, which is just wonderful. You know, and then she's English. You know, so she brings in another international element to it. You know, I'm a New Zealander. You know, people know me for my action roles. You know, and bringing it into the role of Al-Anon. You know, Terry grabbed me today and he said, you know, look, I want to tell you, you know, like, you've filled Al-Anon's shoes. And, you know, to be honest, when I first started looking at the images of Al-Anon, and I saw that he was 7 foot tall and, you know, had long hair and long beard, I thought, I don't sort of look like that. But they've given me a completely different look in this show than what the pictorial version of Al-Anon is in the books. With this sort of shaved side of my head with scarification on the back of my neck. It's a very different version of Al-Anon. But for Terry to sort of say to me this morning, you know, after he's seen the first 8 episodes, that it's just, you know, reinvented but made the character what he believes the qualities of the character be. It's awesome. But it's like Tolkien's, how long it took for Tolkien to come to the screen was based upon waiting for the technology for it to be capable to make the films that could bring that visualization to life. And again, I say that happened in New Zealand with New Zealand practitioners, and that's why Miles and Dan Farrer, our producers, have chosen New Zealand, because they know the production quality's there. And the bigger hurdle to climb now is the fact that 8 years ago when Peter Jackson went, 10 years ago I can make Lord of the Rings now on film. Well, now they're going, well, we can make Shannara on television. And it really is staggering. I mean, if you saw the plates on the trailer this morning,
it looks like a movie trailer.
Well, you see Seattle's Sky Tower. What's it called?
Space Needle.
Yeah, you see the Space Needle lying side on in a swamp it looked like there's lichen and things that have grown over two giant skyscrapers, and that's when our characters are riding into this swamp area and they see that landscape. I mean, you just couldn't have made this for television 2 years ago. The bar's going so high now.
Are the visual effects comparable to any of the movies and shows you've been on before?
The Hobbit, yes, because it's the same people. It's the same people, the same artists.
Yeah, not in my case. I mean, I have been in many genre movies and fantasy films, including Pan's Labyrinth, where there's a big element of there's a lot of visual effects, a lot of fantasy going on, a lot of green screen. But I've definitely never been in a project where it's to such a big degree, so amazing, so groundbreaking. So to me, I mean, I'm a newbie in this, basically.
How much of the show?
Well, the thing is it's as well. I'm used to doing it in film. With The Hobbit. Where you can spend days just getting a couple of minutes of footage, right? But knowing we're doing TV turnaround time, and yet we've got that production value there, it's a sign of the time, Shannara is a kind of it'll be a breakthrough, it'll be another hurdle in the evolution of television. It's where television just gets that little bit closer to film, and you can sit at home, come home from work and turn your big giant HD 3D television, whatever you got that they're selling these days, and this will come on and it'll be like, wow, I don't even have to go to the movies.
Does it correspond to about a chapter an episode, or is it a little more mixed up than that in the scripts?
I heard it starts with book 2, right?
It starts with book 2. It's the Elfstones of Shannara. I do not think it corresponds to the chapter of the book at all. I think there's new elements going on. I don't want to do any spoilers, but I believe that it's sort of distributed in a different way with new elements going in. So it's not my episodes, I believe. Not my chapters.
Well, I'll tell you exactly.
I'm gonna have to swap you.